Hey everybody, welcome to the Blendr Report. I'm your host, Liam DeBoer. Unfortunately, Jonathan Harvey could not join us today as he is currently south of the border scouting our escape from this country. However, today we are joined by a very special guest, Luke Sabourin. This is his second time on the show. The first was episode 89 of the Blendr Report, which you can go back and listen to if you would like the in-depth look into his origin story within the CBSA and his career there, including how management had instructed him to do things that would have infringed on his conscience, including the destruction of evidence, which could have been linked back to international criminal organizations, among many other things. When Luke tried to go through the internal whistleblowing process, he was met with harassment from within the CBSA, but then also later on, he was confronted by cartel members. And again, the whistleblowing process was all internal. So his information presumably had to have been leaked from within the organization, hinting to maybe some very deep corruption there as well. Thank you very much for joining us again today, Luke.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me back.
So we are going to get into some of the legislation that is currently tabled by the Canadian government in Parliament and our concerns about what that means for civil liberties within Canada. However, why don't you just give us a quick recap on your career within the CBSA, what your position was, and then we can get into a larger discussion about the future of Canada.
Well, I'm a former public servant of over 27 years of service. My career started in 1990 with the Department of Defense Intelligence, where I occupied a unique position handling all the highest classified material at the National Defense Intelligence. And after the events of September 11, I was offered to move to Citizenship Immigration Organized Crime Division, which subsequently was amalgamated to the CBSA, which is the Creation of Canada Border Service Agency. From there, I occupied multiple roles, multiple assignments, recertification, training. I occupied positions in the regions at one point or another, dealing directly with the public in an enforcement capacity. And then I had my substantive position at the National Document Fraudulence Center at CBSA headquarters in Ottawa, where my career ended in 2016. After many years of reporting internally to the internal disclosure process, wrongdoing, criminal acts, and severe harassment, attempt to poison me, and the leaking of my personal information to this day that's been never investigated to members of organized crime that actually had participated in their arrest as a CBSA employee back in 2006, which were directly linked to the Mexican cartel. So it was interesting times, I would say.
So would it be safe to say that you were pushed out of the CBSA as soon as you wouldn't engage in some of the systemic corruption that was occurring within the institution?
Yes, I was a problem for them, walking a straight line, being transparent. I was pushed to the end of a psychological breakdown. And when they realized that they couldn't find anything wrong to basically use against me, they pushed me to a psychological breakdown, and it was a termination in disguise what they did. So they silenced me that way. They got rid of 4 other colleagues that were with me that were complaining the same things that we had brought to the attention of the various members of the government. And that did not sit well with CBSA because we had followed all the protocols. And when we saw that this was becoming a matter of national security, public interest for everyone, it didn't sit well with them. So because we had gone to the various members of parliament and we were subsequently all punished and we all ended up without employment. Wow. Each and every one had a distinguished career, some of the highest security clearance, never had been in trouble with the employer. And the day we said no and we started talking, we paid the ultimate price.
Jesus. Well, so this kind of brings us into a larger conversation about the future of Canada. And so we at Blendr News, including Jonathan and I, have been covering some of the bills that are currently tabled, which is the Bill C2, the Strong Borders Act, Bill C8, the Cybersecurity Bill, and Bill C9, which is the Combating Hate Act. Now, each one of these poses a big threat for Canadians in our eyes for different reasons. So when it comes to the Strong Borders Act, this grants new and broad powers to government agencies, including border services, immigration, and export control, with fewer protections for individuals. It shares data demands, also would allow the government to search mail without a warrant, and just vastly expands their powers in the name of national security with a lot of vague language. Then with Bill C8, the Cybersecurity Bill, this would authorize the governor and council or the minister of industry to direct telecom service providers to, quote, do anything or refrain from doing anything that is necessary to secure the Canadian telecommunications system. This would include being able to shut off internet access on a whim. So theoretically, if this legislation is to pass, the Liberal Party of Canada, or any party that gains power after them, would have the ability to direct companies like Bell and Rogers to just completely isolate individuals from telecommunications within Canada. And lastly, we've got Bill C9, which is the Combating Hate Act. And this would amend the criminal code to remove requirement for the Attorney General consent for hate propaganda offenses, creating a new offense of willfully promoting hatred by displaying certain symbols, create a new hate crime offense when underlying offense motivated by hatred. So this brings essentially thought into the legal system and thought crimes because they are legislating emotion. This is no longer just about behaviors or criminal acts themselves, but trying to get into the head of individuals, which is a major concern for myself. But you have expressed concerns to us as well about some of these bills, and I'd love to hear those and have you share them with our audience, considering you have been in these institutions and seen how they operate. And so would love to hear your concerns on that front.
So what I'm about to say is going to be the uncomfortable truth. And I think it's important to inform the public about what's really going on in the background. First and foremost, everything I'm about to say is something that members of Parliament have been made aware of since 2016 by me and my colleagues with supporting documentation. So when it comes to the bill about opening the mail, the Borders Act, this is something that is very concerning. Basically, these things were already happening. Sorry about that, my French again. These things were already happening in the past. I informed the members of Parliament about my concerns back in 2006 about such an issue. And when I look at this today, I'm seeing this in a way that, and this is my perception, that they're just trying to legitimize something that they were already doing. And why I say that is because I provided information with supporting documentation to the Conservative Party and to the Liberal government in 2016, where I was dispatched. While I was in the region, I was dispatched to a government location, and just bear with me here a second. To a government location in order to verify and analyze seized mail that was being held by a government entity outside of the CBSA. The mail belonged to 3 individuals living in Canada. After I carefully reviewed the mail, I had opened it and reviewed and proceeded to seize a certain amount of the mail for further verification and analysis for possible court proceedings. I cataloged the seized item and I asked the person in charge at that location to provide me with the warrant number or another number of a special procedure that was being used that I cannot mention at the moment. That would allow me to seize this for possible use in federal court at a later date. The person in charge of that location became very uncomfortable and stated I should ask my superior because they did not have the information available to give to me. And I submitted my reports and my finding to management at the CBSA. I never received a follow-up on what I seized, and I was never asked again to go to that location, and I wonder why. If I had been subpoenaed to testify in federal court on my seizures of the mail, this would have been possibly and likely been thrown out of court for many reasons. One, I was never provided with a warrant number by management. Second, there was the issue of the chain of custody of what I seized after I turned it over to management at CBSA. Basically, I never received any record from management in the handling of my document seizures. All I can say is that in this particular case, this was a case of national headlines and it was expensive to the Canadian government and the taxpayers. Something like this should have been managed in a more rigorous manner to avoid losing the public confidence in our integrity as an agency. So when I see one of these bills that stipulates giving civilian government employee or even civilian employee in a law enforcement capacity that type of power, I think it's very dangerous.
So just to recap there, you were instructed to look at someone's mail, seize it, and you were never given a warrant behind the scenes for that action.
No, I received the order to go to that. I'm being very careful of what, not to identify location, but it was a government location. I was told that there was seized mail there. Mail was being retained there, and I should go and look at it to see if there's anything of interest. I have some specialized training in analysis and a good solid background in investigation. So I went there and I looked at the mail that was there. The mail was belonging to 3 individuals living in Canada that were already under a certain process with CBSA. I followed my orders, assuming that this was part of a regular process. But after I did my work, the official that was there was a person, an official government employee also, in an investigation capacity. And I asked for the warrant number, and that person became very uncomfortable. I was also uncomfortable not having the proper paperwork in my hands. I was just directed by a high-ranking member to go there. But yet, I was never provided the warrant number before or after I submitted my report. And what happened to what I seized there was never any feedback by management. And they had a duty and obligation to do so. Because if I had been calling court, this would have been a problem.
So when you say that your superiors within the CBSA were very uncomfortable when you asked them about the warrants, in what sense? Did they get on their back foot and kind of feel like, stuttering and this and that, kind of coming up with a thing? Or did they get aggressive towards you? Like, what was that interaction like?
No, actually, it wasn't the CBSA management that was uncomfortable. It was the person at the other government location that was holding the mail.
Okay.
And what happened is when I came back, the management wasn't there. I put whatever I seized with my report on the manager's desk inside his office, and there was never any follow-up by him. And the day went on, I did my job. They went on, and I was never provided any feedback by him or anything. And I was never asked to go there again. Somebody else was dispatched there later on for further other businesses. So, I think that the silence was intentional. So, by CBSA management.
So, do you think that this is a larger trend within these institutions, or do you think that this was a anomaly that you were a part of? Do you, and just kind of happened to be wrong place, wrong time, or wrong person? Or do you think that there is just a pattern of these style of things happening within the institutions?
Well, to be honest with you, based on what I've seen over the years, I think it's something that's common. Whether there was a warrant number or not, there was still been a failure in the process of doing that thing. Second of all, based on everything I've seen and some of the orders I received and some of the things I reported to the MPs, to the RCMP, I think that there's a pattern there, and there's definitely need to an oversight. And when I see these bills, I think that I'm confident that they're just trying to legitimize things that were already being done under the shadow, And this is not. This is one of the many things that when I testified in Parliament, it was agreed that I wouldn't talk about everything to avoid public scrutiny. There was not. It was an opportunity in Parliament to try to restore integrity and the way we do things, and give an opportunity for proper investigation that never came.
So what has your experience been like when you try to bring information like this to MPs? Are you met with concern? Is there a lot of apathy, hostility? What's that process look like?
So just so we're clear, I've always been politically neutral. When I worked as a federal employee, with the type of work I did in operation and intelligence, you always remain neutral and you serve with loyalty. And I apologize, I'm taking a little detour, but it's important.
That's okay.
You serve with loyalty. When I voted as a person, I voted differently from one in the election to another. Now, when I approached my Liberal MP, I provided him with everything I just talked to you and a lot of other things that were concerning, and this was pushed all the way to the Minister of Public Safety at the time, which was Ralph Goodale, and nothing happened from there. When I approached, I knocked on a lot of doors of the Conservative Party, and finally, one very important Conservative Party member in Ottawa opened his door to me. He wasn't there that day, but his political advisor was there, and we sat in a room for more than 1 hour. I handed over to him a lot of supporting documentation on electronic format and paper format. And to get to the point, it seems that he already knew this was going on, but it didn't seem, from what I gather, it didn't seem to be something of an emergency for him. And I was very concerned about that, and I brought that up, and I think that was something that was not well received, where I basically said, look, this is something that you should be very concerned about. Another member of the Conservative Party that I reached out, that's somebody very important, when I reached out to him, I reached out in writing, and I explained that I was reaching out as a federal employee, bringing to him concern that I needed to meet with him, me and my colleagues, not as an individual under his constitution as a constituent. He basically replied to me that I'm not part of his area as a constituent, and I should go back to my Liberal MP. Even though I had spoken with one of his staff, explained to him in detail the reason why I was calling and the information and what was going on. So it was really hard to establish some sort of support. The ones that came to realize the seriousness of this is a matter of national security, and they went above and beyond the border, was the Bloc Québécois. Once they saw some of the evidence I was presenting, they flew in an MP from deep inside Quebec in a snowstorm, and she met with me with her staff. And she realized just how serious the erosion of accountability was happening inside the agency, and the failure of the reporting mechanism, and how we were prevented to speak to the member of parliament. Let's not forget that I was threatened by, and this is why the bill today, I'm saying this is important, why I'm coming out for those bills. I was actually threatened by a high-ranking member of CBSA in writing that I'm not to talk about anything or other things that were occurring, including verbally telling me that if I spoke to the members of parliament, that he would take away my pension and would declare me a threat to national security. Now, can you imagine the power given to somebody like that, and basically saying things like that? So this erosion that was happening, and the constant power to silence everybody has now become a reality into those bills. So nobody will be able to inform anybody on the opposition government for anything that's happening with those bills, to prevent anything like something of public interest, which could have impacts on deliverables.
So I'd love to dive into that a little bit more if you're willing, about the threats. So it was an MP that told you they would put you on a national security list and remove your pension? Oh,
no,
sorry.
No, I informed the MP that my director had threatened that if I talked to the MPs. Gotcha. So now we have someone working under a minority government that feel comfortable enough to tell me that I'm not allowed to go and see the opposition, and that he will take away my pension, and that he may declare me a threat to national security. This is serious. This is serious. This is power that should not be given to people. And now you see these bills coming in. So I think it's important for the public to know that this is something that was being prepared. It was a blueprint for what's coming. And I did say in your podcast, 89, I think, when we met the first time, that accountability was gone and that we would face our worst nightmare. I couldn't go into details in those days because lots was happening in Parliament in the background that I was not allowed to talk about, in order for the good interest of trying to work on supporting the opposition to get Bill C-290 moving forward.
Which was a whistleblower protections bill, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I was I was the person involved with many other whistleblowers to push that bill to give us the protection we needed to speak up when we see wrongdoing, criminal acts, and everything. So I brought that forward to the members of parliament, and unfortunately, it didn't receive the attention that it should by the Conservative Party at the time. And the Bloc took it over, and they pushed it and did what they could beyond the borders, regardless of what people think of the Bloc as a political, entity. But on that day, the Bloc saw what was going on. They realized with the supporting documentation that it was a problem of erosion, and they pushed for Bill C-290 for protection of public servant and the interests of our democracy.
So when it comes to, the director talking to you about not going to opposition parties, now, would it be safe to assume that within these institutions, there's the term that often gets labeled a conspiracy theory, but, the quote unquote deep state, but whatever you want to label it, essentially career bureaucrats that never leave, even though parties may change which party has control of parliament. Now, do you think that some of these institutions, like say the CBSA or RCMP and so on, are like rogue in a sense where they're operating like even Parliament doesn't have a lot of oversight on them? Or do you think that they're an extension of the party that's in power? Like what's that process? Because to me, that seems pretty insane, because you would think that the members of parliament would have more authority than this director, and this director saying that, you can't go to the higher ups than me, otherwise I'm going to ruin your career and your retirement. That to me makes it seem like they're operating almost with their own incentives. Or do you think that this is with the party's support?
I think it's based on what I see, what I reported to the members of parliament, especially the opposition and the bloc. I can say to you that with confidence that it's an extension of the party. I think at this point in time, if I had to speak in official capacity, I think it's an extension of the party, because when I followed the proper protocols, internal disclosure, all the way to my Liberal MP, I can say this about my Liberal MP. He did what he could. He left and he immediately met with the Minister of Public Safety. After that, everything stopped. And I received an email from someone inside the Liberal Party stating to be very careful, that there were people working very hard to cause me problems. And I have that email. I've kept it and I've turned it over to some members of Conservative Party and of the Bloc. In addition to that, that person called me personally on my phone, and I have that phone record, and basically said to me she was very concerned about my safety because of what I was pushing forward and what I was bringing as allegations. So, based on what I've seen, and I reported, and how we were deviating at CBSA with screenings, with the lowering of visas for the Mexican, and how management was basically getting away with a lot of things that I believe was gross negligence that was putting public at risk at one point or another on things I've reported, and I kept reporting it to the parties themselves, like the party in power. I think that there's a problem there, and it's something that should have been investigated, because now, since I testified and my story became headlines everywhere, a lot of things are starting to resurface. People are talking, and things I've identified are now being made public. So we have a problem. We have a serious problem, and those institutions are feeling very comfortable and doing the things that they're doing to people like me and other CBSA employee when they refuse to engage in situations that could cause an embarrassment to the agency or to the public, a prejudice to the public.
So, okay, if these institutions are operating as an extension of the party, and obviously it's been the Liberal Party since 2015, was there a noticeable difference with like, say, during the Conservative rule under Harper and then the Liberal Party rule? Like, how did the culture within the CBSA change over those two administrations?
Well, there was issues with the way we're doing things when we were under the Conservative Party, but this was not something that was that could be pointed at the Conservative. This was something that was happening inside CBSA. As I testified before, when it came to screenings, it was more about the amount of screenings we do versus the quality of the screening. And I've complained about that. I brought it forward, and I did an affidavit to a member of the Conservative Party on that, signed in front of a justice of the peace with supporting evidence. The problems were more internally, and not like I seen when the new government took power. So
Right.
there was a big deviation on established rules and guidelines. We were being directed to skip certain screenings, facilitate flows, and so on. And prior to that, the screenings were more rigorous under the Conservative Party at the time, but the problem was more related with the management and their way of doing things compared to what I'm seeing now when I was employed under the other government. So I apologize for.
No, of course. So yeah, to me that kind of seems like two different issues then. One is an issue of execution in the sense where, back in the days that you were talking about before Trudeau overtook, that yes, there might have been some internal problems, but it was more so a issue of incompetence or bloat within the bureaucracy, whereas some of these issues became almost like institutionalized after 2015. So my question then would be, do you think that if there was a party change, hey, there's a lot of rumors being tossed around as to a Christmas election with the Liberals' budget looking like it might not have support. I'm still of the mind that I think the NDP will pull through for them, that there'll be some sort of backdoor deal similar to the Singh and Trudeau saga. However, would you believe that there would be change on the other side of an election if it went a certain way? Or do you think that the institution and these practices have become so embedded that even a party change wouldn't change course?
I'll repeat myself like a broken record, what I said in many podcasts. In all fairness, there's some very in-depth culture that have established themselves, and whoever is going to be the next political party, if they have integrity and they really want to reestablish the public's trust, they're going to have to do a massive cleanup of a lot of things. I mentioned that to a lot of members of parliament. There's some very serious issues that need to be addressed, and some people just don't belong there. And I've offered to sit down many times with some members of a lot of multiple party to inform them how and I'm looking for my words because I have to be careful how I say it.
Of course.
But there's a lot of a fear of losing power, and I can say to you this with confidence. The members of parliament are not briefed on everything that's happening. There's a lot of control over investigations that are occurring internally. That a report that leaves this thick is probably 2-3 pages long by the time it gets to any member of parliament. Some of them have confirmed to me they never receive anything from, people like me. So there is a very urgent need to clean these agency of individuals that are a problem. And a new government is going to have to do a lot of work, and it's going to have to sit down, whether they like it or not, with insiders, people like me and other CBSA employees and other government employees that are sounding the alarm on methods and practice that the members of parliament are not aware, that are very concerning. So that's all I can say on that.
Now, you've mentioned that you've gone to members of the Conservative Party with some of this information, especially, even in regards to these bills, and come to them with this story of the search and seizure without a warrant of mail. What has the response been like on that front?
Well, it was disappointing. Some people, just so we're clear, some members of the parties, initially when I I started reaching out in 2016 to at least 3 members of the Conservative Party and 2 to the Liberals and 1 MPD and the Bloc. The response from the Conservative Party was one at the time, and I'm not putting everybody in the same boat, just so we're clear. That particular member at that time, the response was very disappointing from somebody of his background and experience from his office. And this occurred 2 or 3 times, and then I reached out to another member of Conservative Party that was out west that was handling immigration issues, and I wrote emails, and I finally got a hold of their office, and I spoke with their management, and I explained who I was, me and my colleagues, and it was the same disappointment. It seemed that somebody was deciding who was going to speak to the member of parliament, and what was important and what wasn't, and that was a problem for me. And as recently as not too long ago, with everything that's been happening with these bills, especially these bills, I reached out to, and this is probably going to be something that's going to be upsetting, but at the same time, I reached out to 2 senators that are working on the bills, these bills that we talked about, these new bills that are being pushed at an expedited rate by the Liberal government. And I reached out to these 2 senators and I said, I would like to gladly meet with you. I reached out in writing and by phone, and I said, I would like to meet with you to talk to you about the bills that you're debating in Senate. And I have insider information, things that I was particularly involved myself, and how you're probably going to have to look at this and look at these bills in a different way, to make sure that you understand just how serious they are and what's being done and the abuse I've seen. So 3 times on one senator I reached out, not even a call back, a courtesy call back, not even a reply to my emails. And when I reached out to their office, I was fortunate enough to receive, to be answered by one of the person there that oversees everything. And what she said to me was very, very concerning. She basically said to me that the senator is very busy debating those bills. And even though I'm an insider, credible insider with supporting documentation, she's too busy. She doesn't have time to listen to me or talk to me.
Wow.
And I actually recorded that conversation. So this is not just about me saying things. This is credible. So you can imagine a member of the public, how hard it would be for them if it's that hard for me as someone who has been employed by the government and has come forward and exposed these things in the public interest. So my question is, and I'd like to further extend this, is when Mr. Poiliev came out a few weeks ago about the RCMP, he made his statement about his opinion of the RCMP and the handling of the SNC Lavalin case. I'd like to say that during that time, I had reached out to the Minister of Justice at the time, and I informed them of what was going on. And I had informed the RCMP what was going on. And so I called the office of Mr. Poiliev, and I left a message to let them know that I was in possession of documents from the RCMP of my investigation and what the outcome was, to show to him as evidence to support what he was saying, publicly about the RCMP. And I left 3 messages so far, and I never received a call back. So we want to help them. We want to provide insider information. And yet, who's deciding on, is it a staff that decides what is important or not? This is something that should be very concerning. And is Monsieur Poiliev aware that people are trying to reach their office and the MPs and the information doesn't get there? So
Well, that's a very interesting problem because I long think about this, and I mean it's probably different from MP to MP, or hey, this stuff even happens in private companies as well. It's not just the Canadian government or government in general. But if there's a bottleneck in your operations, then that person who occupies the bottleneck position has an immense amount of power, right? So if you've got somebody like, let's say, Pierre Poilievre, who has aides and chief of staffs and other people working within his office, and those people have the responsibility to say bring issues to Poilievre from people like yourself, then at the end of the day it's really up to that person as to whether it's not up to Poilievre, it's not up to an elected official or somebody that has a mandate by the people, but it's someone that has been contracted out or hired in that essentially gets to decide what is worth bringing to Parliament. So when it comes to the whole Poilievre and RCMP thing, I'd like to dig into that a little bit more as well, though, because at first I was very excited by the fact that he seemed to be stepping on the gas again. I've said this as far back as the last election that, I thought Poilievre did a pretty good job up until the election was called in opposition against Trudeau. He was hammering on the Green Slush Fund scandal. He had also brought the Winnipeg lab leak scandal, where it was found that the Liberal Party was doing absolutely nothing while they were fully aware that bioterrorism grade viruses were getting shipped out of our top security laboratory and directly into the hands of the Chinese military, and actually to the exact same labs where they were running these gain of function research programs on COVID. And so I was like, okay, this is Poilievre getting his groove back a little bit, because I felt like as soon as the election was called, they changed their strategy from trying to win, trying to take down the Liberal Party, to trying not to lose. And that's a completely different thing. So they all of a sudden just kind of went on the defensive, more so. And then you saw that exact same thing play out with the RCMP scandal, where yes, he said that the RCMP leadership is despicable, that many of the scandals, including the SNC-Lavalin scandal, where the Trudeau government was pressuring the then Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould to drop criminal charges against SNC-Lavalin, who was found to be bribing foreign officials and engaging in corruption. And because this firm is friendly with the Liberal Party, seemingly they were trying to get them to skirt those charges, which is, that's obstruction, if anything, right? And so as soon as the media, the CBC, CTV, and so on, started going after Poilievre for those comments, the classic, he's being divisive, he's aggressive, this is Canada's Trump, and you'd hear all of those kind of things, right? And the fear of jailing political opponents, as if nobody in politics should ever be considered to go to jail if they break the law. And as soon as that hit the airwaves, Poilievre again just went on his back foot, and he stopped fighting, and he was starting to play defensive rather than what I think he should have done, which was to double down. And so when you look at the Conservative Party in dealing with this, do you think that it's more a strategy as to them essentially cowering to these media narratives about them, or do you think that they don't actually have a will to do anything about this, or that they actually don't really care about these issues all that much?
Well, the Mr. Poilievre has a lot of things to think about when he speaks. He's got to be there for everybody, and the perception is everything. And what I've noticed is every time he speaks the uncomfortable truth, one side gets against him, the other side that's supposed to support him is not really there, and he's kind of put in an awkward position. So it's not easy for him to try to please everybody, and at the same time try to get results. And I'm not sure that the people that we've approached really care about what's happening to us, the ones that are bringing information forward. If I have to be brutally honest, is that there seems to be a lot of time wasted in doing committee and exposing things, but we don't see really a lot of results.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you said, it starts really aggressive, but then it tones down, and then it just goes away, but the problem persists. And it's not easy being somebody in charge of a party, and it's not easy to be a member of parliament, but there is an urgent situation that we're facing right now, and they need to be more aggressive and more on the ball.
Before we move on to the next topic, this episode is brought to you by The Tallow Truth. Would you ever eat your skincare? No? Then why put it on your skin, your body's biggest organ? Most skincare products are loaded with chemicals that absorb straight into your body. That hydrating cream might as well come with a hazard warning. Your skin needs real nourishment, not lab experiments. That's why I use F-Bomb from The Tallow Truth, made from grass-fed, grass-finished tallow. It's also hormone-free, antibiotic-free, steroid-free, GMO-free, and even vaccine-free. Nothing artificial, nothing toxic, just results. I've been using F-Bomb from The Tallow Truth for almost a year now, and honestly, I'm never going back. My skin feels hydrated, my fine lines are reducing, and I just look better. Plus, I'm already 40. This shit's not going to get any easier for me. But what makes The Tallow Truth even better is that they're a Freedom First brand that supports Blendr News and everything we stand for. They even offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you've got nothing to lose. So, go to thetallowtruth.com/Blendr and use code BLENDR, BLENDR, for 15% off. This includes 15% off already discounted bundles too, so you can save as much as 40%. That's thetallowtruth.com/Blendr, code BLENDR at checkout for 15% off.
I know one member of the Conservative Party I reached out a few times because of some of the numbers that were being talked about publicly on Twitter and in Parliament during meetings about immigration numbers were not reflective of the real numbers. And I try to reach out and say, can we have a talk here? I have information for you. Those numbers are not really reflective. And I also have insider information about methods and practice that are still going on. And you're talking about this in Parliament, and I think that with the information I would be able to give you, you should try to maybe question the opposition, the other party, and see the reaction, right? And nothing, no follow-up, nothing. So is all of this just a public show? I don't know, but I can tell you how I feel. I think that with all the testimonies that the various professionals have done on Bill C-290 in Parliament to demonstrate the serious problems that we have of accountability inside the public service and how we're being destroyed and how the members of Parliament are not being made aware of everything that's going on, I think that, and I apologize to anybody that may be offended, but I think it was just a big show to pretend they care. But really, when I look at my case and I look at the case of the other officers that testified, Bill C-290 died in Senate. I was made privy of a lot of information as to the fact that there was influence being used to not pass the bill. And sure enough, the bill stayed in Parliament when Parliament was prorogued, and it's gone. The whole hard work that we did is gone. The bill will never be revived, and public servants are at the mercy of having to close their eyes because nobody can talk anymore. And I've urged every member of parliament to understand the importance of this, not just for us, but for democracy, for the members of parliament. Because if you're a member of parliament in not just majority, but the government in power, and you have something inside that is trying to derail your program, you want to hear about it. We don't have to go to the media. We can go to them, install a process that we can reach out to them, nothing. And we wasted a lot of time. I believe that I put myself more at risk by having testified and that there's no result. And what's being promoted about whistleblower by members of parliament, excluding the Bloc. The Bloc did everything they could. Their hands were tied. And on behalf of everybody, we thank them. They brought the bill forward. But the other members of parliament that we approach, I think that this, at the end of the day, they already knew that this would not go by, the bill would not pass, and that we wasted our time and we actually put ourselves more at risk. And as a result of all our testimonies, I think that this could be one of the reasons why these bills that are being introduced today are being pushed at the rate that the expedited rate that they're being pushed, because people are realizing that federal public servants are speaking on things that goes against the narrative and exposing things that, and we have people that don't want to lose power. So it's pretty sad. And I can confirm to you that to this day, some of us that have testified on those bills have never received any feedback on the people that we reached out, trying to help them or asking for more help. And so I don't want to be rude, but I don't think nobody cares. So,
well, I think something you just touched on there, which is very important, is what these bills say about the priority of the government of Canada when you've got a bunch of different crises, no matter whether you look at it from economic standpoint, justice, so on down the line. There is a plethora of issues that need to be tackled in Canada, and that anybody serious as to serving the Canadian people would do. But your first 6 months is primarily focused on putting surveillance bills in place, censorship bills, hate speech bills, this Border Security Act, which, hey, I'm all for. I understand that Canada's border is in shambles at the moment. But those provisions that are in there, I don't really see tackling the core issue. So when you look at that and you go, hey, why is this your priority right now? And also, as far as until the government reforms its bail policies and minimum sentencing policies and implements something along the lines of a 3-strike policy that really would try to crack down on street level crime, until they do something of that nature, then you have to assume that these expanded powers aren't for the criminals, because you're letting the criminals back out onto the street a day after they're found with, some of the drug busts and stuff that we see within the trucking world and all of that, like they get out the next day and we're talking like $50 million worth of illicit substances. And so if that's happening, like, yeah, who are these bills for? But one other thing that I just wanted to touch on there that you brought up was the number of illegal immigrants that they were discussing in Parliament. I believe the official number is an estimate between 20,000 and 500,000, which is a wild thing to say. You might as well just say we have no idea. But then we've also heard the number of 30,000 illegal immigrants that pose a threat. So these aren't just people that came here, took a under-the-counter job. They were just trying to escape a country that they felt, was dangerous or had no economic future for them. But 30,000 people that are what amounts to criminals. So what were you trying to get through to those people that were discussing that topic?
Well, there's a few things here. First of all, how are they verifying those numbers that are being provided to them? That's the first thing. Is it from credible sources? Because the numbers they're saying, and if you look at, let's just talk about the 600, the supposed 600 that they don't know that are dangerous criminals. Okay, if you go back about 3 months ago, somewhere around July, I think, there was a report made by La Presse, and it actually talked about something I brought forward in Parliament, and something that I spoke about in the Sam Cooper podcast about the South American theft gangs. And at that time, there was 750 hard criminals that they didn't know where they were. They were wanted for high criminality, security reasons, and so on. This was not just the illegal immigrants that had come here. Those were individuals with matters of security issues, criminality, and so on. It was 750 at that time. So is CBSA saying that they caught 150 of those already and deported them? Those numbers. And the numbers I received after talking with someone was not matching the numbers that either the numbers that were being presented publicly. So my concern was, is the member of parliament aware? Can I direct you to somebody that is trusted, that knows the exact numbers, just to make sure that you have the right facts for you, your party, to fight for us and to bring to the attention of, the other members of parliament or the public. That was the first thing. The other thing was what I wanted to say is that when I was working as an immigration warrant response officer, the 24/7 border operation unit that answers all the calls for every law enforcement, we take care of all the warrants. If I remember correctly, without being misleading, back in before 2010, we already had over 40,000 warrants issued for people we didn't know where they were. Globally.
Right.
Canada-wide. Over 40,000 warrants. So, what's going on with those numbers? Did they deport 10,000? Can they prove that? Or is somebody just... I don't want to make allegation or speculation, but the numbers don't seem to reflect. Having in-depth knowledge of the amount of removal we do and the limited staff we have to do the removals, I think that somebody needs to go in there and start looking at, did we allocate resource somewhere else to do the removals? Did these people leave voluntary? It's just that having been in there, knowing those numbers, and still talking with other individuals that can't talk, I'm saying to myself, there's a need to verify things to make sure that nobody's being gaslighted. And when I say nobody, I'm not talking about the public. I'm talking about the members of parliament that are fighting on our behalf. Are they being told the truth about the real numbers? Having been in there myself, and having paid the ultimate price for speaking truthfully to members of parliament about the things I saw, and what I did say to the members of parliament is, the agency is only giving you what they want you to know. Simple as that. Simple as that. So I was concerned with those numbers. You look at the amount of immigrants that they say that are here right now, I think 500,000 or something like that. Yeah. Well, does that also account for the ones that are coming through still on the Quebec side, where Rebel News did a reporting and they were showing up to 40, I think, in one night going through the border on the Quebec side? So maybe those numbers are higher. I'm not too sure, but they actually filmed them. So are we still counting those individuals, and are we still monitoring the amount of people going in? So are we still adding those numbers, And you look at the what I've exposed, the theft of the over 400,000 passport overseas, the amount of people that were landing here before we were able to put all those documents inside the database for them to be detected at the border, is that also taken into account? You keep in mind that I reported to the members of parliament that one manager was trying to play with the numbers that I was entering into the database for the performance management office. The numbers that she was saying should be there were not reflective of the actual amount of people or the amount of passport that were in circulation. And I questioned that. And that didn't go well for me. But I kept the numbers anyway, and I put them in and I submitted them with an explanation because the numbers that I was submitting were higher, and somebody was trying to say that they were lower. So again, brings back to what I'm saying. Are the numbers right? And who's providing you those numbers? We try to reach out to them, no feedback. So, and this is not to shame them. This is to show that there's a problem of communication and that the people that we elected have a duty to look into this more in depth and not just listen or accept that what they're getting from somewhere, an area where it's already a problem, that you don't have to take it for granted.
Yeah. And I'm completely on board with you. And I think, unfortunately, just like in the private sector, many people that are in the public sector that take these public office positions, I think they're there for their own reasons. I don't think they genuinely want to serve the country. They simply see it as a good personal opportunity. And therefore, any of these issues, because if your goal was to serve the country, then when these issues came across your desk, you would think, oh my God, I need to stop everything I'm doing and focus on these right now. Like this is the most important thing. But if that's not your true North Star, serving the country, and instead it's about making these institutions serve you in career advancement, then you're not going to rock the boat ever. You're going to actually do probably the opposite, because you think, hey, if I serve the country in this instance, it's going to hurt my chances at getting that next promotion. So I completely agree. And hey, on the more personal side, this is largely why I do this. And I know it's very similar with Jonathan. Was I sat around and was looking at all the public officials and was just thinking, like, none of you people are working on my behalf. So I guess I have to work on my behalf. Like, I have to get to a position where when I have an issue with something that's going on in the country, that I can force you to act on it. And I don't think we're there yet, because we don't have enough our audience is very large, but I don't think it's that mass audience yet. However, that's definitely the end goal, is to be able to force these people to react. But just before we wrap up here, is there anything on that front that you would like our listeners to know, or that we didn't cover today, or something that they can do in their own personal life or personal time in order to try and work towards this? Because I know our audience is very much of a similar mind, and they want to do something about it. And so is there anything on your end that you can think of on that front?
What I keep repeating and saying to everyone out there, everybody who lives in Canada, not just Canadian citizen, is that you need to write to your members of parliament, demand accountability, and ensure that this is taken seriously, because it is our way of life that's going down the drain right now, and our basic rights and freedom are being tossed aside. And the average person that goes to work every day sometimes doesn't have the time to listen to all of this, and that they're working, they're trying to survive, and there's an evolution of things that are heading in the wrong direction, and they need to pay attention to what's being told by people like me who represent their interest. And we need to have at one point or another accountability. we need to remove what the next government needs to do is to remove anybody that is working in an intelligence or law enforcement capacity that is just a bureaucrat needs to be removed from there. We need to have people that wear the uniform, that know how important things are, that you can't leave something for tomorrow that is of public interest and dangerous, that needs to be action right now. And we need to move in that direction. So the public needs to support us, the people who speak forward, because it doesn't matter who you voted for. At one point or another, we're all facing the same problems. And threats don't discriminate. If there's going to be a threat that's going to happen in Canada or something, we're talking a physical threat, they don't care who you voted for. And it all comes back down to accountability. And it's important. And I don't know if I'm making any sense.
No, you are.
But people need to understand how important it is to listen to us. They need to put pressure on their members of parliament to be more proactive, more open, and to act in a way that we need to hold people accountable, especially the ones in position of authority. There's no place for a ministerial bureaucracy when it comes to the safety of the public and the safety of our democracy and the people in parliament. It's everything that we talked earlier. Is the administrative assistant or the political advisor authorized to decide who talks to the member of parliament? Not the leader, but the member of parliament. Is he obligated to bring what we bring to their attention, or does he keep it for himself and he makes a decision on something that's going to affect the rest of the population, And at CBSA, we have too many middle managers and we have too many civilians that are coming from outside that are put in position, and they're providing advice and guidance and making decisions on enforcement and intelligence capacity, and they never wore the uniform. And the people that have the experience are not given the opportunity to be there, and we need to change that. And I'm not trying to score points. I'm talking about what I've seen and what I've experienced myself, and how I've been silenced to prevent that. And that should outrage the public. Because when this podcast ends, life goes on for other people. But at one point or another, some of them are going to cross the border. Some of them are going to be victim to these new bills. And they will have nobody to speak on their behalf because we've all been silenced. And that's something that everybody should remember.
I agree. So yeah, no matter the party, I think the pressure needs to be put onto these people in power in a substantial way when it comes to reaching out to your MPs. Again, if it's just any single one of us, then it probably won't be enough. However, if there are hundreds and thousands of people that are flooding these people's email boxes and public speaking events and such, bringing up these issues, then I think that we can actually start to move the needle, because I don't think I see much of a will on the inside when it comes to these things, and so I think that will needs to be created on the outside and force the insiders to react to it. But yeah, anything else you wanted to add today, Luke, before we get out of here?
No, I want to say thank you. And I wish I could say more, but unfortunately, there's a lot of things that were divulged in Parliament that I can't say for the public interest, because I also have a moral conscience. But a lot of work needs to be done, and we need to have an accountability department at one point or another that will be under the authority of at least two different parties. So nothing could be hidden, and corrective measures could be applied in a timely manner to avoid what all we're facing today. That's all I can say. And I thank you for inviting me to speak on behalf of everybody. And I'd like to say that if I offended anybody today by being brutally honest and speaking the uncomfortable truth, I'm very sorry, but somebody has got to talk and say what's really happening. So.
Well, and thank you, Luke. I appreciate you putting yourself on the line. I mean, I know that even doing what we do comes with personal consequences, but when you're in a position like you are, those consequences are much greater. So thank you for the courage that you show when addressing these issues. I appreciate everything you do for the nation and your fellow countrymen, and I definitely do look at you as one of the few remaining Canadian heroes that are out there. So thank you very much.
I'm just doing my duty as a public servant. That's all it is. So you pay my salary. Everybody pays my salary. So I have a duty and a note to them. So.
Well, thank you very much. Before we get out of here, don't forget to head over to our website where you can sign up for our newsletter, which goes out 5 days a week. That's blendrnews.com, BLENDR news.com. We cover lots of topics like this. Anytime Luke comes to us with information, we'll make sure to include that in the newsletter so you can subscribe there as well. And thanks again for joining us today, Luke, and we'll see everyone later.
My pleasure. Thank you.